Welcome to Older Militaris Radio TV and Real Life Home Catholics. And what we do is all for free and for our love of Jesus Christ and for our Holy Mother, the Church. And we'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. If you like what we are doing and want us to be more professional in our camera work with recording process and everything, become a member of the studio fundraiser so that we can really get as professional as the big boy producers out there and also be even more secure than we are currently when we do these programs exposing the deep state. And we welcome Brother Alexis to the program to discuss the last years of Douglas MacArthur.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Ordo Militaris Radio TV. This is a wonderful apostolate you do without any personal gain, unlike 99% of the YouTubers out there and other social media. And your channel is also unique because it's the only Catholic channel that actually is informing Catholics about the deep state, the international Masonic conspiracy from a Catholic point of view and in regard to their infiltration of our church. And we are finishing our biography of MacArthur, who, though he was not Catholic, he was the liberator of the Philippines and the liberator of the future Catholic South Korea, though South Korea is not majority Catholic. And this has been a wonderful discussion through these many programs in the life of MacArthur. You've read from his wonderful book, if you could hold it up, Reminiscences by Douglas MacArthur. Every American and Catholic should have this on their bookshelf to know something about the history. This is one of the great men of the United States, one of the great statesmen of world history, one of the great generals of world history. He planned and organized the greatest amphibious invasion, and he didn't lose a single man in the history of amphibious warfare, naval warfare even. And by reading, did not know about the deep state, and even he slowly came to realize it. We featured that already in our past programs, and in this program, we're going to talk about how he came to clash swords with them. And we're going to,
So
reason that he might have been assassinated. So, last program we finished his retirement with the end of the War of Korea. So we're into his retirement. What does he do after Korea?
So on December 9, 1950, he writes, I was shocked by the article that was published in the New York Times of Saturday, December 9th, 1950. It read in part, President Truman has threatened to beat up a critic who had criticized the singing of his daughter, Margaret, at a concert here Tuesday night. The story came out in the presidential letter that leaked out to the newspaper. The missive to Paul Hume, music critic of the Washington Post, caused almost as great a sensation as the letter Mr. Truman wrote to a member of the Congress a few months ago, in which he referred to the Marine Corps as the Navy's police force. What was learned of the latest letter appeared as a balladerized version published by Washington Daily News. Margaret Truman sang here the other day. Paul Hume, the Washington Post music critic, panned her. He is now showing around a letter on White House letterhead, which goes like this. I have just read your lousy review buried in the back pages. You sound like a frustrated old man who never made a success. An 8-ulcer man on a 4-ulcer job, and all 4 ulcers working. And MacArthur's like, I am free to confess that this article dismayed me. I realized that I was standing at the apex of a situation which could make me the next victim of such an uncontrolled passion. It came with sadness and violence. What a contrast with the calm dignity and self-control of President Lincoln in a somewhat comparable circumstance with General Grant. He wrote him on April 30th, 1864 as follows. Not expecting to see you again before the spring campaign opens, I wish to express in this way my entire satisfaction with what you have done up to this time, so far as I understand it. The particulars of your plan I neither know or seek to know. You are vigilant and self-reliant, and pleased with this. I wish not to obtrude any constraints or restraint upon you. While I am very anxious that any great disaster or capture of our men in great numbers shall be avoided, I know these points are less likely to escape your attention than they would mine. If there is anything wanting which is within my power to give, do not fail to let me know it. And now, with a brave army and a just cause, may God sustain you.
So Truman was one of the first presidents to troll someone. Did it in a letter,
Mhm.
and quite remarkable. But in that age, you see the shock that anyone would speak that way. Now people speak that way 24/7 on Twitter all the time, and if you don't, they'll come out at you even more viciously because the Marxists have destroyed America, and,
Yeah.
and so. But the Korean War had just begun. So the Korean War ends in what, 52, 54?
About 54, 56.
Okay, does that Eisenhower's now in the presidency and
He's not quite
well, we
in
already
the
covered that.
he's not quite in the White House. Truman's still.
Okay. And we already mentioned how MacArthur was extremely disappointed that someone should suggest his name as a Republican candidate to run against Truman. That caused him a lot of trouble. And that's maybe when his trouble began.
Yeah.
And we explained that. But so what does he do once the war is over?
So the order of his release reached Tokyo on the afternoon on the 11th of December, as the radios broke through their normal program to announce a special bulletin from Washington. President Truman has just removed General MacArthur from his far eastern and Korean commands and from the direction of the occupation of Japan. In the embassy, we had just finished luncheon, and I was preparing to leave for the front in Korea. The bulletin had been heard by one of my faithful aides, Colonel Sidney Huff, who had been with me for many years. He informed my wife by telephone that had been removed from command, with the only reason given a doubt that would be able to support the policies of the administration. I saw the look of distress on her face as she told me, but as for myself, I had long ago become shock-proof. Jeannie, I said, we're going home at last.
Mhm. That's the ultimate ingratitude to a president who should before this man. And that shows, if anything, should be a criteria upon which the presidency of Truman and his character as a man should be judged forever. It should be that act. And he was obviously a despicable, petty man, and with no care for American foreign interests.
So,
But Arthur, it was a blessing. Here's a man who knew obedience, how to look at it as a sign of God's will. And
so they get home finally.
where is home?
New York. And the city of New York City throws him the biggest ticker tape parade ever seen.
That must have really annoyed Truman.
and he could barely speak on the floor of the House to the Senate and to the Congress without being interrupted over and over with applause.
This shows you even more how petty Truman was. That the whole nation praised him for what he did. He basically single-handedly won the war in the East, two wars in the Pacific. And did he make any comment about either of those occasions?
East he stays quiet through all that. He saves it all for his one last speech.
Okay. So he what did he do until 59 when the plots, the gears of plots begin against him?
He just again receives the thanks and praise of the nation. Goes around to the, I guess probably seen old sites of home, where he was born, where he grew up. All these, you know, that's what I'm
Is this when
guessing.
is this when he begins writing his reminiscence?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's in these years. Okay. So he got on the bad side of the deep state. Did they just launch an attack on him, or had he been making some statements that irked them to attack him in 59 on January 11th?
It was the point of no return when he was about ready to invade China to end the communist Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
and they were slowly taking away his power.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tell him you can't bomb the full bridge, and
Mm-hmm.
then he blows up saying, "What is the most idiotic thing ever? You have to swear your allegiance to a president who's only in office 4 years instead of to the nation."
That's exactly right. We had a real democracy. Our generals would swear an oath to the nation, to the people, and not to the president. You notice that little, most people don't know that. So don't say, the Constitution is going to save us. The Constitution got us into this problem. And so he was like Patton. He wanted to end the communist threat. Patton got assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
That's now known that he was done in because there was nothing wrong with his car, and your grandfather can certify that. Your grandfather was his mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
So if people think Ordo Militaris Radio TV doesn't know what's going on in the history, his family has history, a lot of history, and that's why AJ is so interested in this stuff, and he speaks with more authority than all those other fake talking heads that are always just trying to, raise money for themselves, and they push their little narratives, but don't tell you what's going on. So why last years of MacArthur's life, what happened?
Yeah, so the beginning of the end. On May 12th, 1962, he writes, "I was awarded the Sylvanus Thayer Medal, the highest honor of the United States Military Academy. That day, I reviewed the Corps of Cadets on the plains of West Point. He lunched with them at the mess hall, then responded to the presentation of the award. I had no prepared address, but my remarks were recorded as follows."
Okay, but how about January 11th, 59? You said he was attacked in the newspaper?
We already read that.
Oh, okay. Oh, that was the attack. Okay. Okay, when you said, when you read it, you read the year, you said the year 1950. Confused me. Okay. So just correction on that. Okay, so now here we're going to see the mind and the oratoric skills of this man who, without any preparation, gives a discourse that's not only recorded but kept for history. And this is one of these important speeches that everyone should read who studies American history, and every Catholic and every Christian and everyone who cares for America should study, because this is more important than Eisenhower's speech when he left office.
Yeah. So before I begin to read it, this was a speech that I wanted to follow my family's history at West Point. This is what drove me to want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
As I was leaving the hotel the morning A doorman asked me, "Where are you headed for, General?" And I replied, "West Point." He remarked, "Beautiful place. Have you been there before?" No human being could fail to be deeply moved by such a tribute as this. Coming from a profession I have served so long, and a people I have loved so well, it fills me with an emotion I cannot express. But this award is not intended primarily to honor a personality, but to symbolize a great moral code, the code of conduct and chivalry of those who guard this beloved land of culture and ancient descent. That is the meaning of the medallion. For all eyes and for all time, it is the expression of the ethics of the American soldier. That it should be integrated in this way with the noble and ideal arouses a sense of pride and yet of humility which will be with me always. Duty, honor, country. Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, and what you will be. They are your rallying points to build courage when courage seems to fail, to gain faith when there seems to be little cause for faith, to create hope when hope becomes forlorn. Unhappily, I possess neither the eloquence of this diction, that poetry of imagination, nor the brilliance of metaphor to tell you all that they mean. The unbelievers will say they are but words, but a slogan, but a flamboyant phrase. Every pedant, every demagogue, every cynic, every hypocrite, every troublemaker, and I am sorry to say some others of an entirely different character, will try to downgrade them even to the extent of mockery and ridicule. But these are some of the things they do. They build your basic character. They mold you for your future roles as custodians of the nation's defense. They make you strong enough to know when you are weak and brave enough to face yourself when you are afraid. They teach you to be proud and unbending in honest failure, but humble and gentle in success, not to substitute words for actions, not to seek the path of comfort, but to face the stress and spur of difficulty and challenge, to learn to stand up in the storm, but to have compassion on those who fail, to master yourself before you seek to master uh, others, to have a heart that is clean, a goal that is high, to learn to laugh yet never forget how to weep, to reach into the future yet never neglect the past, to be serious yet never to take yourself too seriously, to be modest so that you will remember the simplicity of true greatness, the open mind of true wisdom, the meekness of true strength. They give you a temper of the will, a quality of the imagination, a vigor of the emotions, a freshness of deep springs of life, a temperamental predominance of courage over timidity, an appetite for adventure over love of ease. They create in your heart the sense of wonder, the unfailing hope of what next, and the joy of inspiration of life. They teach you in this way to be an officer and gentleman. And what sort of soldiers are those you are to lead? Are they reliable? Are they brave? Are they capable of victory? Their story is known to all of you. It is the story of the American man at arms. My estimate of him was formed on the battlefield many years ago and has never changed. I regarded him then as I regard him now. as one of the world's noblest figures, not only as one of the finest military characters, but also as the one of the most stainless. His name and fame are birthright of every American citizen. In his youth and strength, his love and loyalty, he gave all that mortality can give. He needs no eulogy from me or from any other man. He was written he was written his own history and written it and read on his enemies' breasts. But when I think of his patience under adversity, of his courage under fire, and of his modesty in victory, I am filled with the emotion of admiration I cannot put into words. He belongs to history as furnishing one of the greatest generations in the principles of liberty. Excuse me. Furnishing one of the greatest examples of successful patriotism. He belongs to posterity as the instructor of future generations in the principles of liberty and freedom. He belongs to the present to us by his virtues and by his achievements. In 20 campaigns, on 100 battlefields, around 1,000 campfires, I have witnessed the enduring fortitudes that patriotic self-abnegation and that invincible determination from which have carved his status in the hearts of his people. From one end of the world to the other, he has drained deep the chalice of courage. As I listen to those songs of Glee Club in memory's eye, I could see those staggering columns of the First World War, bending under soggy pack on many a weary march from dripping dusk to drizzling dawn, slogging ankle deep through the mire of shell-shocked roads, to form grisly for the attack. Blue-lipped, covered with sludge and mud, chilled by the wind and rain, driving home to their objective, and for many so to the judgment seat of God. I do not know the dignity of their birth, but I do know the glory of their death. They died unquestionably, uncomplaining, with faith in their hearts and on their lips the hope that we would go on to victory. Always for them, duty, honor, country. Always their blood and sweat and tears as we sought the way and light in the truth. And 20 years after, on the other side of the globe, again the filth of murky foxholes, the stench of ghostly trenches, the slime of dripping dugouts, those rolling suns of relentless heat, those torrential rains of devastating storms, the loneliness and utter desolation of jungle trails, the bitterness of long separation from those they loved and cherished, the deadly pestilence of tropical disease, the horror-stricken areas of war, the resolute and determined defense, their swift and sure attack, their indomitable purpose, their complete and decisive victory, always victory, always through the bloody haze of their reverberating shot. The vision of gaunt, ghastly men reverently following their password of duty, honor, country. The code which those words perpetrate embraces the highest moral laws and will stand the test of any ethics and philosophies ever promulgated for the uplift of mankind. Its requirements are for the things that are right, and its strengths are from the things that are wrong. The soldier above all other men is required to practice the greatest act of religious training, sacrifice. In battle and in the face of danger and death, he discloses those divine attributes which his Maker gave when he created man in his own image. No physical courage, no brute instinct can take the place of divine help, which alone can sustain him. However horrible the incidents of war may be, the soldier who is called upon to offer and to give his life for his country is the noblest development of mankind. You now face a new world, a world of change, a thrust into outer space of satellites, spears, missiles mark the beginning of another epoch in the long story of mankind. The chapter of the space age. In the 5 or more billions of years that scientists tell us it has taken to form Earth. In the 3 or more billion years of development of the human race. There has never been a greater, more abrupt, or staggering evolution. We deal now we deal now not with things of this world alone, but with the eliminable distances and as yet unfathomable mysteries of the universe. We are reaching out for a new and boundless frontier. We speak in strange terms of harnessing the cosmic energy, of making winds and tides work for us, of creating unheard of synthetic materials to supplement or even replace our old standard basics, of purifying seawater for our drink, mining ocean floor for new fields of wealth and food, of preventatives to expand life into the hundreds of years, of controlling the weather for more equitable distribution of heat and cold, of rain and shine, of spaceships to the moon, as the primary target in war, no longer limited to the armed forces of an enemy, but instead include his civil populations, of ultimate conflict between the united human race and the sinister forces of some other planetary galaxy, of such dreams and fantasies as to make the life the most exciting of all times. And through all this welter of change and development, your mission remains fixed, determined, inviolable. It is to win our wars. Everything else in your professional career is but a corollary to this vital dedication. All other public purposes, all other public projects, all other public needs, great or small, will find others for their accomplishment. But you are the ones who are trained to fight. Yours is the profession of arms, the will to win, the sure knowledge that in war there is no substitute for victory, that if you lose, the nation will be destroyed, that the very obsession of your public service must be duty, honor, country. Others will debate the controversial issues, national and international, which divides man's minds. But serene, calm, and aloof, you stand as the nation's war guardian, as its life guard, from the raging tides of international conflict, as its gladiator in the arena of battle. For a century and a half you have defended, guarded, and protected its hallowed traditions of liberty and freedom, of right and justice. Let civilian voices argue the merits or demerits of our process of government, whether our strength is being sapped by deficient financing indulged in too long, by federal paternalism grown too mighty, by power groups grown too arrogant, by politics grown too corrupt, by crime grown too rampant, by moral grown too low, by taxes grown too high, the extremists grown too violent. Whether our personal liberties are as thorough and complete as they should be, these great national problems are not for your professional participation or military solution. Your guidepost stands out like a tenfold beacon in the night. Duty, honor, country. You are the leaven from which binds together the entire fabric of our national system of defense. From your ranks come the great captains who hold the nation's destiny in their hands. The moment the war tocsin sounds, the long gray line has never failed us. Were you to do so, a million ghosts in olive drab and brown khaki, in blue and gray would rise from their white crosses, thundering those magic words: duty, honor, country. This does not mean that you are warmongers. On the contrary, The soldier above all other people prays for peace. For he must suffer and bear the deepest wounds and scars of war. But always in our ears ring the ominous words of Plato, that wisest of all philosophers. Only the dead have seen the end of war. The shadows are lengthening for me. The twilight is here. My days of old have vanished tone and tint. They have gone glimmering through the dreams of things that were. The memory is one of the wondrous beauty, watered by tears and coaxed and caressed by the smiles of yesterday. I listen vainly, but with thirsting ears, the witching melody of faint bugles blowing reveille, of far drums beating the long roll. In my dreams I hear again the crash of guns, the rattle of musketry, the strange, mournful mutter of the battlefield. But in the evening of my memory, always I come back to West Point. Always there echoes and re-echoes in my ears. Duty, honor, country. Today marks my final roll call with you. But I want you to know that when I cross the river, my last conscious thoughts will be the cord, in the cord. I bid you farewell.
That's an excellent speech, and if you listen to it very closely, the deep state listened to this speech, and the deep state did exactly the opposite of everything he praised. Because with MacArthur, Skull and Bones realized that the only last threat to their complete power over the United States was a victorious general in war who was honorable, upright, who would do his duty, defend his country, and live in honorably. And so, what do we see from this speech onward? We have never won a war.
Mm-hmm.
We have never won. So that because he said, if you don't win the war, the nation will be destroyed. Their objective is to destroy the nation so they can control it. So they have organized wars that we would lose. They have corrupted the morals of the US Army in the most horrible, baseless way. They have politicized the soldier with the most outrageous Marxist agendas. And they have taken away the honor of fighting a just war by putting US military in wars that were unjust, founded upon lies, throwing away tens of thousands of men's lives for nothing, lying to them, medically experimenting on them, destroying their minds, their souls, and their bodies. If MacArthur was alive today, he'd have an even more poignant talk. But he points out who it is. It's the corrupt, evil men, the greedy, and the power grabbers. And they were on the stage with him that day.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on the stage with them that day. Within 11 months, he'd be dead.
Yeah.
And within 18 months, they will have assassinated President Kennedy. And that begins the complete dominance of the deep state over the United States. There's no democracy, in fact, after that. There wasn't much before it, but once they eliminated the heroic generals Patton and MacArthur, they had everything in their pocket. And we did a program series on Jack Ryan, a Catholic hero. He worked for the United States in helping develop the police forces of Laos, Vietnam, and Indonesia. He was in the Second World War, and he died under very mysterious circumstances. And we talked about the other people who were opposed to Westmoreland's fake war in Vietnam and how they all died mysteriously before it began.
Yeah.
MacArthur dies before Vietnam. What does he die of, and why is this suspicious?
Yes. Okay. There we go.
And did he say anything against the war in Vietnam? So those are the big facts.
Yes. President Kennedy goes to him, asks him about what should we do with Vietnam, and MacArthur gives his his knowledge of Asia and how the people are over there. And so that sets the stage of President Kennedy not wanting to go to war in Vietnam. And so, which was total opposite of General Westmoreland.
And Westmoreland was on the stage when he got to the award at West Point in '62.
So, so the first critic of Westmoreland, Douglas MacArthur, gets killed by primary biliary cholangitis.
What is that?
Um, it is an autoimmune disease of the liver. It results from slow progressive destruction of the small bile ducts of the liver, causing bile and other toxins to build up in the liver. A condition called cholestasis. Further slow damage of the liver tissue can lead to scarring, fibrosis, eventually cirrhosis. But
Is this a
um
common disease?
um it's common in women.
Yes.
It's
It's
not
rare in
common.
men.
It's not common in men.
And it's an autoimmune disease, so it could be caused by a vaccine,
Yep.
something that would induce the body to attack itself.
Hmm.
And did the CIA have the technology to give people injections and cause them to come down with things like this in the '60s?
Oh yeah, they had the heart attack gun, which was a dart gun that shot a dart into your heart or whatever,
Mhm.
but the dart disappears. And when
Mhm.
the heart attack
And
gun
then
was
was
shown
there,
in Congress, so
yeah,
they
and then there
were.
was
Go
there
ahead.
was the girlfriend of the alleged shooter of JFK. She worked on a cancer injection. If they'd give you an injection claiming it's a vaccine, you'd come out and die of cancer. So they had lots of funding in this, and they might have been even learning this from the Japanese and the Germans who did a lot of experiments with this. So, but MacArthur also spoke. Oh no, who started the Vietnam War? Who was the guy who actually started? It wasn't Kennedy. It was Kennedy was out of town. He basically started the war by sending a cable that was unauthorized. It was
Averill Harriman.
Abel Harriman. Abel Harriman ran for the presidency in 1960, didn't he? And was
Yeah.
he in favor of the Vietnam War?
Oh yeah.
Hmm. So this speech by MacArthur, extempore, meaning he didn't prepare it, would have goaded them so much because he named the living God. He claimed man was made in the image of God, and he claimed the perfection of man consisted in his duty, that's justice, righteousness, in honor, that means virtue, and his country, defending your country from globalism, internationalism, and any kind of evil conspiracy of men. So you can see that they would have just been fuming at this speech, absolutely fuming. And this award that they gave him, did they give it to him to praise him, or do you think they gave it to him to cover the fact that they were plotting the murder?
Since all the globalist deep state actors received the same award before and after him, it was to gloat him and to prepare his death.
So they wanted to make themselves appear to be his friends, but they really hated him. So, yeah, the first person to receive this was Dulles, wasn't it?
Dulles.
Yeah. And who was the second? The second guy? I don't know. Eisenhower received it. He was their big friend. All their friends received it, and then they gave it to MacArthur. Do you think that's all of a sudden they had a conversion and they gave it to their enemy? No, that's not how it works. That's called psychological cover. And one can imagine that maybe you could get poisoned by eating something at a lunch because the food you eat goes right past the liver. And not saying we have no evidence, and he's long dead, and perhaps nothing could ever be done to discover this. But where is in what hospital did he die? Why does that add more doubt over his diagnosis and the reason cause of death?
He dies at the Walter Reed Medical Center. And in our, what was it? Our Go For Syndrome show and the other shows on medical experimentation on the troops, all that stuff was prepared at Walter Reed Medical Center.
Yeah. Walter Reed Medical Center has a section for biologic warfare, and without the consent of soldiers, they've tested it on many soldiers there. That's come out in the last 50 years. So it's highly likely that his diagnosis was false and that he was poisoned or done away with, so that when the war did break out, he could say to President Kennedy, "Stop this." You know, if he had heard that Harriman sent the cable unauthorized to start the war, he would have immediately raised hell with the general brass. He would have been calling for court-martial and treason trial.
Yeah.
Because he was the leading moral authority in the U.S. military, even though he was retired. The whole nation would turn to him and listen to him. So his death was a necessity for their agenda, an absolute necessity. And the person who agreed with his advice was also assassinated. That's President Kennedy. And the person who agreed with Kennedy's advice, Robert Kennedy, was also assassinated by the CIA.
Yeah, so MacArthur dies first, Kennedy dies second, Robert Kennedy dies next. The Catholic president of Vietnam dies after that. Then Jack Ryan dies. Then
yeah, I think the Catholic president of Vietnam died before Kennedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone else who disagreed with Moreland died after that.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Prime Minister of Australia died before Jack Ryan too, about 6 months before. A whole bunch of people were just bumped off to put this thing through. And don't think this has stopped, because people work like this with the CIA, the Clinton family. There's a long list of, I think it's 53 people now who have died under mysterious circumstances. You oppose that, you something you you get brain hemorrhage, or you drop dead, or you run off the road, you know. So it is my personal prayer that in the last day, when the dead rise again to judge, that our Lord shall assign to MacArthur to judge these men. I think he would give a really good, just sentence, and that would be retribution, the kind of retribution that only God can give. But we can remember MacArthur for the great man he was. Him and Patton, America's history would have been different if they had lived, and they had become maybe presidents or leaders of the United States.
Yeah. So please get your copy of the Reminiscence book. It's linked in the show page. And for the last time, I want to thank the Douglas MacArthur Library in Norfolk, Virginia, for finally allowing us to do these programs.
And if you want to pay respects to General Douglas MacArthur, he's buried in the library at Norfolk, right in the Central Hall, I believe. And so you can pay your respects to him there. The mere fact that he chose to be buried in his library and not in Arlington Cemetery already speaks volumes about what he came to know about America in his last years.
Yep. So that is the end of our series on Douglas MacArthur. So please share all the episodes, 8, 9 or 10 episodes we've done. Please share them, get them out there. And like I said before, if you don't like censoring we're getting when we're getting bubbled and censored when we speak, you can help with that. Help us get the studio built so we can have our own recording stuff, so we don't have to use the deep state's own programs to record these shows.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on this series for Douglas and MacArthur. I look forward to future programs.
This is Order Military City TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.